Pp2 students, welcome to our online sessions. Today we are going to revise the Red-Headed League, our story in New Hello. Let's start to revise together page 55 and the New Hello together. As we have here, and as you can see on the screen, the title, The Red-Headed League. Here on the right hand, we have some information about the writer, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859-1930. Let's read about him together. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was born in Edinburgh, UK. Edinburgh is the capital city of Scotland. He studied to be a doctor, but he also liked writing stories. After university, he became a doctor and writer. He wrote stories and books about history. Conan Doyle is famous for the character he invented called Sherlock Holmes. He wrote a study in Scarlet in 1887. It was the first of 60 stories about Sherlock Holmes, a detective who lived at 221B Baker Street in London in the 1880s. He solved lots of crimes and mysteries with his friend Watson. These stories were very popular and many people believed that Sherlock Holmes was a real person. We stay at the same page. Let's discuss here the questions on the left hand, and we have question number 1. Read about the writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and answer the question. What is the name of the famous man in many of Conan Doyle's stories? If we check again or reread the text, we will find that he is called, Sherlock Holmes. That's correct. Now let's move to the next question, question 2. Which of the words in red in the text mean the following? I have here many words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. Character, detective, solve crimes, mysteries, and real. Which of them mean the following? Number 1 is already solved. 1, found an answer to a problem. It's solved. Number 2, true, not false. Which one means true? Is it character? Is it detective? Is it crimes? Is it mysteries or real? Yes, the right answer is real. Okay. Then number 3, things that people do that are bad or wrong. Of course, it's crimes. The word is crimes. Number 4, a person who finds the answers to problems or mysteries. He is a detective. Good. Number 5, things that are difficult to explain. Yes, mysteries. So the last one, a person and a story, it must be character. It must be character. Let's go down. Let's complete together. Question number 3. Are the sentences true, T, or false, F? Number 1 is already solved. Number 1, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was born in London. False. He was born in Edinburgh. 2, he did not become a doctor because he wanted to be a writer. Let's go back to the text and think about it. Is that true or false? Of course, it's false. He became a doctor and a writer too. Question number three. Sherlock Holmes was a real detective who lived in London in 1880s. We are not sure about that. Maybe a real person. Many people believe that Sherlock Holmes was a real person, but we are not sure about that, so that's false also. Question 4. Conan Doyle wrote books about art. True or false? Think about it. Yes, it's false because he wrote about history. Now let's move to the second part on the left hand at the bottom of the page, the same page, page 55. Let's read together. London in the 19th century. The Red-Headed League, this is the name of our story, is one of 12 short stories in a book called The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. They are about London at the end of the 19th century. At that time, England was becoming a rich country. Most people were living in cities, but many people were poor, so there was a lot of crime. Dr. Joseph Bell, Dodd's professor at university, gave Doyle the idea of Sherlock Holmes. Dr. Bell could work out information about his patients by observing them. Sherlock Holmes did use his information about crimes in the same way. He thinks in the same way. Here, that's an internet search. Find out what is at 221B Barker Street in London today. This is internet search, you can do it alone. You can check Google Maps or whatever on the internet. Here, question 4. Which of the words in red in the text mean the following? Here we have league, watch, walk out, and observing. Number 1, to find out something from facts or information. It's already done. Walk out. Question 2, watching or studying a person or thing carefully. Is it league? Is it watch or observing? Yes, it's observing. Question 3, having a lot of money. Of course, it means rich. And 4, group of people. It's league. Question 1 in the critical thinking. Why do you think more people were living in cities in the 19th century? Can you think about that? Why? A lot of people live in the cities in that time. Of course, the cities or the big cities like London was a big one which provided a lot of jobs for the people. That's why a lot of people moved there. Question 2, why do you think that detective stories were popular at the time? Maybe because crime rates were high at that time and people wanted to read about them being solved. Now you have finished page 55. Let's move to the next page, page 56 together, which has the first chapter. Let's move to page 56 together, please. The Red-Headed League, chapter 1. I know we have studied together, but let's revise this chapter together. A lot of students were absent at the past few weeks. One day, Dr. Watson visited his friend Sherlock Holmes at his home in London. When he arrived, Sherlock Holmes was talking to a man in his living room. The man's name was Mr. James Wilson. Mr. Wilson knew that Holmes was a famous detective who could solve crimes and he wanted him to solve a mystery. So here in this paragraph or at the beginning of the story, we can see that Dr. Watson is visiting his friend Sherlock Holmes, who is already solving a mystery or is trying to solve a mystery. There is someone who is called Mr. James Wilson. He's speaking with Holmes. Let's see. While Mr. Wilson was talking, Holmes looked at him carefully. As we can see here, Holmes is getting information from him even by looking by his observation. Great one. He looked at Mr. Wilson's face, his hands, and his clothes. He worked out that Mr. Wilson used to be a laborer, which means someone who walks with the hands, that he visited China in the past, and that he did a lot of writing also. When Sherlock Holmes told Mr. Wilson this information, he was very surprised because everything Sherlock Holmes said was true. Mr. Wilson decided that Holmes must be a wonderful detective. Mr. Wilson started telling Holmes his story. He had a small shop. Now Mr. Wilson is speaking about his story or mystery. He had a small shop in London where he worked with his assistant, Vincent Spaulding. Now we have a new character, Vincent Spaulding. This person or this character is the assistant of Mr. Wilson. Not many people visited Mr. Wilson's shop, and he wasn't a rich man. One day, Mr. Spaulding showed him an advert in the newspaper for a job with the Red-Headed League. The Red-Headed League is a group of the people who have red hair. Let's complete reading on the same page. Here on the right hand. The Red-Headed League found jobs for men with red hair. Mr. Spaulding wanted Mr. Wilson to ask about the job because Mr. Wilson already had red hair and the job was only a few hours a week. The money could really help Mr. Wilson and his small shop. That afternoon, Mr. Spaulding took Mr. Wilson to the Red-Headed League. There were a lot of men waiting outside the office and they all had red hair. But Mr. Spaulding pushed past all the men until they were outside the door. They went inside and met the manager, Mr. Duncan Ross, who told them about the job. So here we have Mr. Duncan Ross. He is the boss of this league. The person who got the job would have to come to the office. Now, these are the demands of the person who is going to have the job. The person who got the job would have to come to the office every day between 10 and 2 o'clock. He wouldn't be able to leave the office during this time. While he was in the office, he would have to copy all the information from a large encyclopedia. Encyclopedia is a book which has a lot of information, like Genesis Encyclopedia, Genesis Encyclopedia, for example. Into a book. The money was £4, sterling pounds of course, English pounds of course, a week. This was a lot of money. Mr. Ross told Mr. Wilson that if he could start work the next day, he could have the job. Mr. Wilson was very surprised but quickly said yes. As we see in the picture here, the office of the Red-Headed League. I have finished my session today. And the next session, we will move to page 57, which has the questions. We will solve some of them together. So goodbye for now and take care, everybody.